Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service for Florida's talk and entertainment networks, and in the Orlando area on Tough TV 38. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm political analyst Al Spry, and we're going to talk politics with our national political correspondent, Rhodes Cook. Wonderful guy who always comes on the show with some interesting insights.
We think probably one of the most in-depth analysts in the country, low for the last several years. Democrat, Republican, he calls them as he sees them, and he usually drives that cart right down the middle. So we think you'll enjoy his commentary. Stay put. The Florida Roundtable begins following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks, and in the Orlando area of Tough TV as well. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
I'm political analyst Al Spry. It's great to be with you, Reagan, as always, and I hope you are well this holiday season.
I am. Allow me to be amongst the last to wish you Happy New Year, since here we are on the first weekend of 2014.
You can actually say Happy New Year throughout the month of January. So I'm going to fully use that.
Take advantage of that, okay.
That reasoning.
Well, it seems like it was only yesterday we were sitting here saying welcome to 2013. So watch out, folks, because it goes fast.
I'd like to welcome all the viewers of Tough TV. We have been on for quite a while now, and we appreciate everybody listening on Channel 38 in Orlando.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're even on the Tough TV network nationwide, which is very nice. We appreciate that opportunity as well. Thank you very much. And so it just extends our reach, reach of reason. I'm going to say.
There you go.
Because this is a rational, reasonable show.
We certainly hope. We try, right?
And we give you the straight dough.
We try
without all the fluff. We don't like fluff.
No, politely asking the hard questions.
Yes. Because we don't want to sandbag anybody.
No.
Even if sometimes we want to take a baseball bat to them, we don't want to sandbag them. You know what I mean, Reagan? We're still gentlemen.
We do give the guests the opportunity to have their say.
And I think we just want to avoid jail time.
Well, yeah.
I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, that is true. That's true.
I want to start off this segment with who is the political winner of 2013.
All right.
A year beginning version of our show.
Okay.
So let's talk about the political loser. Marco Rubio, senator from Florida.
Yeah.
Loser. Why? Well, it began over the past 12 months. It's the diminishment. It's been very dramatic. Well, he tied his coattails. He hitched his wagon, so to speak, to the very contentious issue of immigration. He created a bill, and then he decided to vote against that bill and ask others to vote against the same bill. Kind of interesting, but that's politics in Florida.
It is. Well, he made a number of, it remains to be seen if they were actual missteps. I mean, a day in politics can be a lifetime, you know. But he voted with the minority when it came to the budget deal that was finally cut. He was in favor of the government shutdown.
That's another problem. Most people are not in favor of the government
See,
shutdown. See, and that's the thing.
So I don't know whether you go put your head in the sand and be quiet for a while and hope that people will forget, because most voters have short memories.
Yeah, they do.
But
this is one of the good things about politicians that they can count on.
Yeah.
Is that most people are easily distracted and have short-term memories.
So
we don't.
Well, we get paid not to.
We have longer-term memories than even many politicians in Florida who we can name, but we're not going to name.
Yeah.
But we can think of a couple.
Yeah. So,
or at least one.
I would agree with you. I think the political missteps qualify to put him up as the loser of the year.
Of the year. I'm not of the lifetime, not of 5 years.
I mean,
but this year.
Here's a young Hispanic man, attractive, a new face of the Republican Party, already had been touted as a possible vice president or even a presidential candidate down the road. So, he really does have to kind of step back and make some readjustments here if he's going to continue to be a national player.
Right, he has to get his BS in line with the party BS.
Yeah.
You can't have your BS
Yeah.
out of line with the party BS, because then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It has to be right down that middle.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you alienate people
Yeah.
who like their BS the way they like it. The winner of Florida,
Yeah.
as far as politics goes, Rick Scott.
Okay.
Governor Rick Scott looking a lot better than he did at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
People are feeling kind of warm and fuzzy about him a little bit, just a little. He's the state is doing better.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's all Rick Scott's doing, that's debatable.
But he certainly is open to taking credit for it, as many of them do.
Well, wouldn't you be? I would.
Yeah, of course.
Well, unemployment going down? Yeah, that's me. Sure.
You see what we told you 4 years ago? It's working.
Yeah.
So,
he's heading into an election year presiding over the lowest unemployment rate in Florida has had in 5 years, 6.4%. Now, I think it would have happened anyway because that's the way trends work. But if he wants to take credit for it, hey, he's the governor, why not?
Well, and that's it. No president, no governor can actually take credit for those big, wide economic swings. As you say, they're going to happen. The economy runs along, and it is not controllable by a single politician.
Well, and that's when they were blaming Bush for the economic conditions. There was some culpability.
Yeah.
All these wars get expensive. However, that trend might have happened as it was the hangover after the party Clinton years, when all the money was free flowing. Of course, you have to pay the piper eventually.
Yeah.
When you loosen banking regulations, you have to pay the piper eventually. Yeah. That's just the way it is.
That's right.
It just happened to be under Bush's watch.
Yeah. So.
And we're seeing similar things with President Obama.
Yeah.
So that's the winner and loser right there.
All right. And I'll tell you what, on that note, let us take a pause along the network line. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And our conversation continues following these messages. We're back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. And, of course, in the Orlando area, we are seen on Tough TV 38. And we welcome our television viewers as well. Well, Al, here we are. It's our first program of 2014, and it is always a distinct pleasure for us to welcome to these quarters a gentleman that I think is one of the premier political analysts in the United States today, and that is Rhodes Cook, author of the Rhodes Cook Letter. And Rhodes, Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Florida Roundtable.
Thank you very much, Reagan and Al. It's great to be with you again, particularly on your first show of the new year.
Well, we thought, being as here we are, brand new year, maybe we'll take a little bit of time and we can look back and maybe we'll make some predictions and we'll get you in here in January of 2015 and we'll
make it an annual thing because
see if we
nothing says New Year than tipping one back with Rhodes, politically speaking.
Yeah, and over the years, Al and I have had our share of crow and whatnot.
We have.
So
we have had crow with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Yeah. 2013. So I kind of throw the ball into your court. The big political story of 2013, if you were putting out, the new edition of the newsletter, what is on the top of the political pyramid for 2013 in your book, Rhodes?
Okay, in terms of looking backward here, is that right, Reagan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I think in terms of politics, I think the rollout of Obamacare probably comes first to mind. All of the problems that it had and is still having, and kind of the golden issue that gives the Republicans heading into 2014. On the other hand, there is the government shutdown, which is probably a close second in terms of major happenings, here at the federal level. And the Republicans look none too good on that. So we headed out of 2013 with both both parties having some problems. Both parties having some intra-party factionalism too was particularly obvious on the Republican side, with the Tea Party at first seeming to rule the roost when it came to the government shutdown, and then being kind of put down by Speaker Boehner near the end of the year in favor of a more moderate voices. But the Democrats, by the end of the year, were having a little trouble keeping their coalition together, particularly when it came on Obamacare and whether to honor the president's pledge to allow people to keep existing health care policies. 39 House Democrats defected and joined the Republicans on a bill that would have required the president to keep his promise there. So each side was showing a little some problems within their ranks that were kind of new. They had been pretty much in lockstep. Republicans siding with Republicans, Democrats with the president, and but by the end of 2013, we showed a little different signs there.
Well, and of course, the reason is, in my opinion, we have elections next year. Well, shall we say this year?
Yeah.
Since we're in this year, we're right on the cusp, though. I can get away with it. But they're trying to position themselves for the best run in 14. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. That's why they say you don't expect to see a whole lot happen legislatively in an election year. 2014 is going to be a big midterm election. The Republicans, as they were in 2012, are within shot of taking over the Senate. The Democrats have a bit more of an uphill fight to take over the House of Representatives, but it's their hope they can do so. And then you have all of these governorships around the country. About 2/3, actually more closer to 3/4 of the governorships are up for election this year, including the one in your home state of Florida there. So there's a lot on the ballot. There's a lot for the parties to position themselves for. And, we're just waiting to get started.
Hey, Reagan, I was thinking when Rhodes was saying about that there won't be much done legislatively. I don't know if you gentlemen realize this, but this is the least productive Congress
ever.
In at least, I think, is it ever? In at least 60 years, if not more. When Harry Truman talked about the Do-Nothing Congress, they passed much more legislation than this Congress did.
Just within the last few days, the Wall Street Journal did a front-page expose on that with the color charts and the whole business. And this particular Congress was in line to have 63, 65 laws that actually got passed and went to the president. The Do-Nothing Congress of the Harry Truman era had 85. And according to the Wall Street Journal, this Congress is on track to be the least productive Congress in the entire history of the United States.
So this is the do less than nothing Congress.
Yeah, you could say that.
What would you think? What do you think, Rhodes?
Well, I think that that's a problem more for the Democrats than for the Republicans. I mean, the Republican operating philosophy is for smaller, less active government. So this is probably the year of their dreams, in terms of
to do nothing.
The Democrats are the ones who would take issue with that, the ones who would be most feel the sturm and angst of the whole situation, because they're the ones who, have an agenda to push, and it's not being done. So, I think maybe at least one of the two parties is probably satisfied, and the other one is much less so.
So, in other words, the Republicans, being satisfied, have done exactly what they wanted to do pretty much over the last, 35 years, as far as the corporate favoritism and passing all the pro stuff, and limiting government. Or is there more to do?
Let me say one thing. A part and parcel of this is a different kind of a philosophy of what gets to the floor in the House. And you remember a fellow by the name of Dennis Hastert from Illinois? Former Speaker.
Right.
They have what they call the Hastert Rule. And that is, if they don't have the votes to push it through, and they're not certain of it, it doesn't even get a hearing on the floor of the House.
Yeah, but that's not democracy.
And John Boehner,
that's not representative government.
It's a rule of the House of Representatives that they've used for years now. And John Boehner subscribes to the Dennis Hastert philosophy, which was something new. And that is cited as a part of the reason why so very little came through there.
So the Hastert rule is a big part of why it's a less than do-nothing Congress.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they should get rid of the rule and we can have a more active debate over things.
It's a philosophy that he brought in that they have subscribed to.
The Republicans.
Yes. And so they would, since they are the majority of the House, they would be the ones that would have to say, well, maybe we need to walk away from that. Doesn't look like they're going to. But then on the other hand, who expected John Boehner to spank the Tea Party as the year ended either?
You want to know something? I knew that sooner or later that he would, and here's why. When the Tea Party first came out some 3-odd years ago and started marching and going to the Capitol, I knew that it was going to be, it's a little bit too active for the status quo. And remember, gentlemen, the status quo always wins in the end because rich people like to keep their money, and it's just the way it is. Nobody wants to rock the boat too much. And so my idea was, when the Tea Party first started making their voices heard, was that they would eventually be co-opted by one party or another. It turned out to be the Republican Party, and then they would be silenced. And that's exactly what happened. The same as when the occupiers got silenced. So anyone that really wants to rock the boat too much, they pretty much get silenced. Your thoughts, Rhodes?
Well, it sounds plausible to me. I mean, what you're saying, it's kind of, though, whether they look outside the political system then, though, if they're being silenced. I mean, they look to another part of the political process, and the two other parts are, one, to do nothing, to the retreat to the sidelines whence from they came and kind of abstain from voting, or two, show interest in creating a force outside the two major parties, something like Ross Perot did back in the early 1990s. And, we'll have to see how this plays out. I think something to watch will be the Senate primaries across the course of 2014, which have an establishment versus Tea Party dynamic to it, such as the one Mitch McConnell has in Kentucky, or Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, or Lamar Alexander in Tennessee, or Tad Cochran in Mississippi. These are veteran Senate Republican incumbents who are going to be challenged by Tea Party opponents in the primary. And kind of, if the Tea Party loses all of these challenges that they have, then they might seriously, look for, maybe begin looking for a new home, for 2016. Again, not that they would march into the Democratic Party, no way, but, whether they would kind of, as I say, retreat to the sidelines or look to the formation of a third political force. It's about it. That often happens cyclically in American history, and it seems to be about time, for that to happen again.
Interesting. And staying with that Senate notion, there's this big overriding feeling amongst the establishment Republicans that in 2014 they cannot have any wrong candidates if they're going to take control of the United States Senate. I think back to 2 years ago when Harry Reid should have been gone, except the Republican nominee ended up being, I don't even want to talk about her. She should never have had the nomination. They had problems in the East. Now, I'll go out on a limb here, and I'll say that I think that in 2014, the Republicans are going to end up with 50 or 51 seats in the United States Senate. Al Franken's in trouble in Minnesota. They got problems in Montana. They have problems in Arkansas. They have problems in Louisiana. There's 4 right there. And of course that would create a much more important role for Joe Biden if we come out with a 50-50 split, that he would have to be there to break the ties. But I can see them doing that. But we're seeing, as you pointed out, this concerted notion that they have got to have the right candidates. They can't have a splinter or a fringe type approach that happened to them 4 years ago. That makes sense,
right.
Rhodes? Yeah.
Yes, it does, and it looks like the party establishment realizes that as well, and it's getting more active in the primary process than they were in 2012 or 2010 when some of these nominees got through who ended up sinking the Republican ticket. And yes, as a result, I think this primary season coming up, which will start in March in Texas, will be extremely interesting.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, on that note, let us take a pause along the network line. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Regan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest this day, one of the nation's foremost political analysts, Rhodes Cook. Visit his website, rhodescook.com. He has a newsletter that is just superb. This man is marvelous at doing the research, crunching the numbers, and pretty much taking a line right down the middle. He calls them as he sees them within both parties. So whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you will enjoy the work that Rhodes Cook does, and we highly recommend that you take a good look. You become a subscriber, as Al and I did years ago. And okay, enough. Yeah.
No, keep going.
Keep going. Yeah, all right. We'll do that again in a few minutes. But in any event, if you, our dear listeners, will stay put, the conversation continues following these messages. From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV 38 in Central Florida. I'm Regan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest this day, our first edition of 2014, is Rhodes Cook, political analyst extraordinary. And Rhodes, always a pleasure to have you with us in these quarters. And we look forward to a number of visits. 2014, a very important electoral year. And we get you here periodically as we go along to get your assessment of the national scene and the Florida scene as well. I know Al was anxious to do this, and I'm too, and we started to touch on this as that last segment came to an end. Your notion of the conditions and historical comparison of the possibility of the formation of a third party or movement in that direction as this year rolls along. What do you see in the tea leaves?
Well, I see that prospect. I think the conditions now are pretty similar to the early 1990s when we had the Perot movement sprout very abruptly, really, in 1992. You have a government that is kind of divided and dysfunctional, if you would. You have a president who has a low approval rating. You have a sluggish economy. I think the unemployment rate's still puttering around 7%. You have a sense that the country is not moving in the right direction among many voters, and you have a growing number of people who call themselves independents, who are not affiliated with either party. And I think if you put all of that together, you have the conditions for a third party. I think the general reason that no third party has ever won the White House, though, I think are still there. One, we have a very strong two-party heritage in this country. It's basically set up to be a government with two parties. We have the infrastructure problems that a third party has of getting on the ballot, in all 50 states. And if they're running candidates for Congress, then you're talking about hundreds of congressional districts as well. And this takes a lot of manpower, a lot of smarts, so to speak, and a lot of money. So the whole business of ballot access, the access to money, make it a very daunting task. But I think on the environmental side, I think the conditions are increasingly ripe for such a movement, mainly because I think there's a growing feeling among the electorate, a pox on both your houses.
Well, let's dive into this a little bit. Since no one running as an independent has ever won the White House, what makes the formation of people who want to form a third party even think that they have a shot? Because things are much more entrenched now into the two-party system than they've ever been, even when Perot and before that were running. The only one that came close was Teddy Roosevelt when he ran as a bull moose after serving as president. What makes them think that it's even worth the time to do this third-party thing when the chips are very much stacked against any success?
Well, I think that one thing could be frustration. Particularly the Tea Party people, and I'm thinking mainly of starting with the Tea Party. You could say the source of a third party might come from two different directions here. One is the Tea Party, and the second is a disaffected center. I would say that elements of both, helped form the Perot movement back in 1992. Now, I would say that the fact that something has never happened doesn't mean it won't happen.
True. That is true.
In the future. It just means the trend line is difficult, very difficult. And I think we live in I think we live in unusual times, too. I mean, I never would have thought that Ross Perot, say, could have come out of the woodwork. He was on nobody's lips at the beginning of 1992, and by the end of the year, he had won nearly 20 million votes, about 20% of the vote. What's more, that at one point in the year, in the spring, he was actually ahead in the Gallup poll. Yeah. He was ahead of Clinton. He was ahead of President Bush 1, at that point. So there was kind of an opening there that I think some missteps on his part and the normal tendency to end up voting for one of the two major parties kind of caught hold. But there still was an opening that I think, a third party might be able to go through in these times. I think these times, as I say, you just look back at the last 20 years of American history. You have the Perot movement in 1992. In 94, you have the Republicans gaining control of both chambers of Congress, something that was very unexpected at the beginning of that year. You had the impeachment of President Clinton that was highly unusual. You had the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Plus, you had that Electoral College misfire of 2000 in that election. And you had the election of an African American as president in 2008. I mean, we live in very unusual political times. Yeah. So that in a way, I would say that I would keep that option under consideration. I would totally admit, Al, it's difficult, mainly because of what you note is the history, but two, just the daunting aspects of ballot access and getting media credibility. But at the same time, if you get some wealthy candidate who would back it, and with the campaign finance laws as they are, they're much looser than they were. You can pump tens of millions of dollars into a political effort now maybe you don't even have to disclose who you are.
Yeah.
You know, they might be able to get over that hurdle now in ways they couldn't in the past. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm saying I wouldn't bet the ranch on it. I wouldn't bet probably several cans of dog food on it. But at the same point, I would say the prospects of it are probably worth considering with something other than a laugh.
One of the notions that we do have to remember, one of the facts, the only third party that was ever successful that elected a president was the Republicans. and the gulf and the circumstances that opened up in those years that allowed for the creation of the Republican Party, I don't know that we're anywhere near that wide of a gulf in the country today.
Well, yeah, we don't have that polarizing slavery issue and things like that.
You also have to remember the first time the Republicans ran, they lost.
Right.
1856, they lost it. Yes, Teddy Roosevelt did well and whatnot. He knew he was going to lose, and his was a personal hatred of William Howard Taft, his former dear friend, whom he turned on. And 4 years later, Teddy Roosevelt was back in the Republican Party, and he was even talking about trying to get the nomination of 1920 for himself again, except that he died in 1919. So anyways, but over the years too, just very quickly, a lot of times when a third party came along, the Democrats or the Republicans adopted their most important ideas and made it a part of their particular platform and literally pulled the rug out from under them. So these are all circumstances that I think go to the point that Rhodes was making. And tell you what, let us take another pause along the network line. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest today is our national, I don't know if I ever said this, our national political correspondent. Can we give you that title, Rhodes?
We could say that now.
Well, if a healthy paycheck will follow.
Remember, this is Clear Channel.
But being what they are, as the wizard said, yes, I will accept the role.
The author of the Rhodes Cook Letter. Visit his website at rhodescook.com. Stay put. Our conversation continues following these messages. We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV 38 in the Orlando area. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And our very special guest, political analyst Rhodes Cook. And Rhodes, as we start this brand new year, we always like to say thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to share some time with us and some of your analysis of what is going on with the parties all around the country.
Thank you. I always enjoy being with you and Al.
Well, we think you're great, Rhodes, and we appreciate all the time you give us on the show. It always adds a certain flavor, as we like to say. Let's talk statewide. We have Governor Rick Scott, who's running for re-election. Former Governor Charlie Crist is most likely going to be his adversary. Where do you see this one ending up?
Well, I'm just looking right now down at the latest ratings from the Cook Political Report. This is non-relative but a friend, Charlie Cook, who has a political operation and does a lot of top-flight prognosticating. And in the toss-up column, he has 6 races. 6 governorships, and at the top of the Republican column is Rick Scott of Florida. Toss-up is the way he rates it going into 2014. So it looks like Florida is clearly the largest state with a toss-up gubernatorial race, and you have a controversial incumbent and a controversial non-incumbent, and the former governor Charlie Crist, who's actually switched parties, since his last stint in office. I mean, this is a great matchup, and it's the nation's going to be watching.
I think my prediction on it is Scott will prevail in the race. There's a couple of reasons why. He has the money. The economy's doing better. He can take credit for that. These things tend to favor the incumbent anyway. And Charlie Crist is a turncoat in most Republicans' eyes. So they'll vote not only for Scott, but against Crist. And that's going to be a very hard thing to beat, I think. So I think it's more than a toss-up. I think it'll be Scott. I wouldn't have said that a couple of years ago, but things to be rolling so much better now.
Yeah, even in the middle of 2013, we probably wouldn't have said that.
What do you think, Reagan?
Well, I tend to agree with you, and I think money is going to be one of the overwhelming factors. And I mean, I know that Charlie Crist has some of the richest lawyers in the state backing him and pushing him along. But he also has some very well-known Democrats who have come out and said, be careful what you wish for. You need to go back and look at what he did as governor and reflect upon whether you would want him to be elected as a Democrat, knowing what he did in the 4 years he was in there. And included among those is the name Lawton Childs. Now, Lawton Childs, the governor, is dead, of course, but his son is still very active and controls an awful lot of money. And he recently wrote a scathing article about Charlie Crist, warning Democrats to be careful. So,
why doesn't Lawton Childs run for governor? He's got the name.
He ran in the primary, was it 4 years ago, and lost out to Alex Sink. He was a part of that primary. Yes, he did have his name up, but he didn't get there. So it's going to be a tight one. And Rhodes, we know that you're going to be watching it very carefully as well. We also have a congressional district down here that's pretty evenly split that I know you're watching.
Yes, the 13th, where Bill Young was the congressman, died last October, and opened up the seat for a special election. Primary coming up in within 2 weeks, and then the special election itself in early March. And this one's drawn national attention, I think, for two reasons. One, it's a Gulf Coast district in the heart, basically, of the nation's largest battleground state, which is your state, and Florida, and also the district itself is kind of a microcosm of the state as a whole in terms of it being highly competitive. President Obama carried it by 1 percentage point back in 2012, while Bill Young was winning the last of his many terms in Congress at that point. So generally the special elections that we've had since the beginning of 2013 have been in, very blue states, such as the Senate races in New Jersey and Massachusetts, or districts, congressional districts, which are either very blue or very red. This is the first of the special elections that will be held in really a purple district, a swing district, and I think it'll be looked on by many nationally as a harbinger, the outcome there as a harbinger of what may come in November of 2014.
Rhodes, on that note, regrettably, we're going to have to call a halt to the proceedings here today. But as always, we enjoy your analysis. We wish you the best in 2014, good health, and many, many newsletters ahead, and a lot of visits here on the Florida Roundtable as we crank up the primary season. So thank you so much, Rhodes.
That all sounds great, and Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New
and
Year,
to all your listeners.
This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And we'll be back with a brief closing thought following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And always a pleasure to have Rhodes Cook with us. Delightful gentleman, and again, we wish him well and good health in 2014.
He's a raconteur just like me, Reagan.
There you go. That's why we enjoy it.
Good to have him on Tough TV as well.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about Florida. And even during the recession, we've been growing at a rate of 3.75%. We are about to overtake New York as the third largest state in the union. Everybody
thought it was going to happen in 2013, but the Census Bureau in recent days tells us that we missed by 98,267. So I guess it's going to take a couple more months at least.
Well, a friend of mine commented.
It's going to happen.
A friend of mine commented to me the other day that Florida is the new California. We still have cheap land.
Yeah.
We have good weather. People are moving here for retirement and get away from the cold.
Yep.
We don't have an income tax.
Yep.
We have our share of kooks, but then, other states do as well. We have probably as many kooks as California, if not more.
Florida.
So it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Florida is is a great state. I'm happy to live here. I enjoy it. It's always entertaining, never boring.
Yeah, and I do believe that before 2014 is over, they're going to tell us we are the third largest state in the country. So,
yeah, exactly. Right. And as a former New Yorker, I'm here. So that tells you right now.
There you go. Happy New Year to everyone. We thank you for your time this day. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And we'll see you again in 1 week with another edition of the Florida Roundtable.
Happy New Year.
You've been listening to Florida Roundtable, a weekly look at issues and problems of concern to Floridians from a state, national, and international perspective. Presented by the Florida News Network with your hosts, Reagan Smith and Al Spry. The views and opinions expressed during the preceding program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's ownership, management, or sponsors of FNN. Your views and opinions are welcome. Address your card or letter to Florida Roundtable in care of Reagan Smith, 2500 Maitland Center Parkway, Suite 407, Maitland, Florida, 32751. Or you may email reagansmith@fnnonline.com. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week for another edition of Florida Roundtable.